Once upon a time, Mazda had planned to run their own luxury car brand called Amati. It was 1991, they had this idea, they wanted to build their own luxury brand and turn what they had into something more like what Toyota and Lexus had. Toyota being the cheap brand that anyone can get into and drive their cars, etc. And then Lexus building on that reliability record of Toyota, being a reliable brand but also a very luxurious brand in a time where brands like BMW, Mercedes, Audi, etc. were growing in the European market. So Japanese automakers like Mazda, like Lexus, wanted to do the same thing. Obviously Toyota were successful with Lexus, and Mazda had this Amati idea as well. Unfortunately, 1991 is a very key year in Japan. It was just before the 1992 economic crash. This crash meant that all of the plans for this secret luxury brand that Mazda were working on fell apart. To keep the brand going, they simply couldn't run Amati at the same time. It just wasn't going to work for them. And Mazda viewed this as a bit of a stain on their record. They named it like an open flesh wound. They had these amazing plans to run a luxury car brand and they had flopped completely. Out of their own control, obviously, because of the economic crash in Japan at the time. It was so bad, in fact, that in 1992, in October, Mazda announced the fact that they were pulling it from the market. It wasn't going to be a thing, and they apologized publicly to everyone, and they haven't addressed it since. Since then, they have built some iconic cars. I mean, in 1991, they had the 787B win the Le Mans, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Obviously, the Mazda MX-5, which started slightly before then and has continued on with some amazing generations ever since. And of course, cars like the Mazda RX-7. They've even had other success in motorsports, obviously in the rallying world and in the sports car world as well. They have made all these different types of quite successful cars, and more recently as well, of course, they've got the Mazda 3 MPS, the Mazda 6 MPS, cars just like that are a bit more performant than your average road car. But what they haven't done is build any luxury cars or any particularly luxurious cars. That is until more recently. So today you find me driving around in a Mazda 6 estate through the mountains in Switzerland, a lovely place I love to come and record here. You'll know if you've watched the channel before. And I'm doing that in a surprising level of luxury in this Mazda. Like, I genuinely am surprised at how nice it is in here. So let's pull the car over and have a quick chat about what Mazda have started to offer more recently. This Mazda 6 really isn't anything special to look at from the outside. It doesn't set the world alight at all. It's just a very boring standard estate. Yes, it's got some basic alloys on it. Yes, it's actually quite a nice looking car at the front. But in general, it's not a car that you look at and think, wow, luxury car. And to be honest, even though I really do love an estate, I do think it looks a little bit better as a saloon. Main benefit, of course, of an estate being that I can do this. And it has a bunch of boot space. So look at that, I've got my bag in there and my wife's bag in there as well. So much room in there, particularly good for someone who, like me, has recently taken up golf. But this should come as no surprise. I'm talking about a Mazda here. It's not a luxury car. It's not the kind of car that we look at and we think luxury car. It's not a brand that we typically associate with luxury. That is until you step onto the interior. Now please remember, this car starts at around £22,000. But if you look at the interior, it is not befitting of a car that costs that much money. A 2021 example will cost you around £16,000 second hand as well right now. But if we look at this interior very quickly, the materials that are used, all this lovely leather around here and then these sort of plasticky faux metal bits and whatever, actually compare this to the Mercedes A-Class that I drove a couple of years ago, and genuinely it is as good, if not better in most cases. If we step inside the car very quickly, it feels very much a better car in terms of how it's put together. Everything just feels comfortable. There's no squeaks, there's no rattles. Everything feels nice. These seats are heated as well, which is very nice. It means that you can make your passenger feel uncomfortable. And the steering wheel is a really, really cool command center as well. You've got these nice digital parts of the dashboard. And on the steering, we've got a bunch of different controls. We can turn off and on some of the safety features for the car. Lane assist absolutely pisses me off, by the way. It really, really kills me in this car. But it is nicer than Mercedes. It's not quite as aggressive in the way that it makes the car turn. It doesn't scare the life out of you. It just is a little bit annoying. So sometimes it's nice to turn that off. But yes, as I sit in this car, it's a very nice place to be. I love the Apple CarPlay on it. The screen is really nice. I like that it hasn't got that horrible sort of like metallic looking trim around the outside. It's just nice and simple. It's a touch screen as well, which is always nice. If you look down here as well, you can see the dual zone climate control, which is lovely for me and my wife because typically she likes to be way hotter than I am. As you can see here, it is an automatic as well. Now, I'll talk more about the automatic gearbox when we go for a little drive in a moment, but it's okay. This center console is incredible. It's actually full of everything you'd need, like obviously the cup holder, etc. in there. In here you've got all of your charging stuff. I really do like the look and feel of this car, and everything feels so well put together. I was so surprised for a cheap car brand how good this actually feels. Even in the rear you've got the thing that pulls down and you can open it up and charge your phone in there and put cups in there and that kind of stuff. Genuinely, I know this is not a luxury car. I've been in a 7 Series recently as an example. It is a mile away from that, a million miles away from that. But compared to a lot of normal road cars from brands like Ford, even brands like Mercedes, I really don't think it's that bad. In fact, I think it's pretty up there. And I think the main difference between this and a luxury Lexus, as an example that I've been in recently, is literally an analog clock here on the dashboard to kind of confirm that it's a luxury car. Right, let's grab some B-roll and then we will take it for a drive. I can tell you about how it drives and how I feel like Mazda has done a better job of making more comfortable driving cars. So here we are again driving the Mazda 6 through these lovely roads here in Switzerland. Now, one thing that I found about this car straight away is the keyless stop start. I mean, it's a pretty standard feature on most cars now, or at least most premium cars today. I'm going to say the word premium a lot during this video. Maybe let's turn it into a drinking game. As soon as you're in the car as well, you connect up to that Apple CarPlay that I mentioned before. Again, very simple, basic stuff you expect to see in most modern cars today of a similar standard. Digital dashboard is really nice. It tells me what I need to know, and I really like the heads-up display in front of me. If anything, I focus a bit too much on the heads-up display. It's there all the time, telling me what speed I'm doing, telling me whether I'm in the right lane, etc, etc, etc. It has cruise control, which is very useful on motorways, but all of that is kind of neither here nor there. Genuinely, when you actually drive the car, it feels very comfortable. It's super planted. The ride is very, very smooth and comfortable. You don't feel too much of the road being aggressive underneath you. I appreciate, by the way, Switzerland has very lovely roads, but it definitely doesn't feel tin canny. I've been in some other Mazdas of the early 2000s, for example, like the Mazda 3, the Mazda 2, those kinds of cars as well. They're fine, but they are clearly economy cheap cars. Their purpose is to be cheap and cheerful, get you into driving, and they do a great job of that. This doesn't feel like those cars at all, especially in the way that it handles the road. It feels much more akin to a car like a BMW or a Mercedes when I'm out driving it. There are a couple of bits that still remind you that it's an economy car every so often. Obviously, I haven't got the leather seats option in this car, for example, so it's still got this material instead, but even that material feels quite nice. And the gearbox is another telltale sign. Obviously, I've got the automatic in this car, as I mentioned. The auto is good when you're on day-to-day town driving. You just cruise around, it does its job, you don't even think about it, it's just there in the background doing its thing. On the motorway, I would say it's absolutely trash, like genuinely awful. For some reason, if you want to speed the car up, first of all, it's got no grunt anyway, so it lacks that kind of waftability that you would expect of an actual luxury or proper premium car. But when you actually want to kick down a gear and start moving, and you obviously put your foot down, it does absolutely nothing. First of all, it doesn't want to go anywhere, and second of all, it kicks down too many gears. So I've been on the motorway cruising along, climbing a hill, there's a car going slowly or a truck going slowly in front of me. I want to go around it, I put my foot down, it kicks down a gear, and then it kicks down another gear, and then you're suddenly revving the life out of the car and it won't change up. Now that could be a fault with this car specifically, I don't know, but this one definitely, the gear kick down in the auto box is atrocious. In those scenarios, you're better off chucking it into manual and doing the gears yourself. Obviously, it's got no paddle gearbox. This is all done by the lever down below me. And if I kick down a couple of gears and try and go, you'll see that it has absolutely no grunt at all. It's screaming at me and it's going nowhere, literally nowhere. And it refuses to change gear as well. So yeah, that gearbox thing, not a huge fan of that. So the drive is kind of a mixture of two worlds. On the one hand, yes, it's definitely more premium than the average car, but at the same time, it has these telltale signs that just don't quite let it adhere to the same kind of ability of a nice luxury BMW or a nice luxury Mercedes. But actually driving around in it, I've got my heated seat on, I've got my dual zone climate control, I'm chilling, everything is comfortable. It's a perfect car from all of those different perspectives. Also, the weather is absolutely atrocious right now, and it still feels like a very comfortable car to drive. I'm not worried at all about cruising along at any kind of speed. It's very comfortable. Yeah, it's a nice car to drive, even when the conditions are as bad as they are right now. But I think I need to compare it to two different brands, right? So I mentioned this car starts at around £22,000. That's not dissimilar to cars from the brand Skoda, which I have said many times is like the people's cheap luxury car brand. They really do some really lovely cars and way more luxury than you would expect. out of a Skoda. And I've also driven more recently a Mercedes around these same kind of parts in Switzerland, so I can do a direct comparison. Let's start with Mercedes. I think that when you drive a Mercedes, you expect it to be more premium. The brand holds that premium weight behind it. And so I was hugely underwhelmed by that Mercedes. I'm not saying it's a worse car than this, but it underwhelmed me. I look back on it as a car that I didn't really like driving very much. It wasn't my favorite. I'd have preferred to have had anything else, to be honest. Anything that was a little bit more just usable, user-friendly, and less up its own arse, really, is the best way of putting it. The Skoda, on the other hand, it doesn't claim to be anything at all. It claims to be a cheap economy car, no questions asked, no frills attached, and it over-delivered on its promise. So with that same thought process in mind, Mazda has really over-delivered for me. This car is a better car than the Skoda Fabia that I drove around here. Obviously, it's in a slightly different class, it's bigger, it's supposed to be more comfortable to do long journeys like the one I'm currently doing, but it has definitely over-delivered on my expectations of what a cheap economy car should be. It is more comfortable to drive than the Mercedes was. The interior is more intuitive, more useful, more comfortable, and better put together from my perspective. The only thing that I preferred in the Mercedes to this was the really long infotainment. I thought that was really cool, that nice big screen in front of me, but that's neither here nor there. I don't use it. I look at my map and that's about it. It's not quite as practical as the Skoda was. Skoda have some really cool stuff in there to make the cars a little bit more practical and whatever, but that doesn't attest to the luxury piece. And to be honest, this is one of the more base spec Mazda 6s. You can go for much higher specs than this one, whereas the Skoda was also a base spec and it was not as luxurious as this, or at least as premium as this. If I boil it all the way back down to it, Skoda is more luxurious if you go for an LNK. If you go for a Lauren and Clement version of a Skoda, they really do pack a punch in terms of luxury, how premium they are. Everything in them is great quality and I'm a huge fan. Same goes for a Mercedes. Buy yourself an S-Class or whatever it is, you're getting an absolute machine. They are a different class of luxury. There's no questions there. But if we're looking at the economy Mercedes, the economy Skoda, and the economy Mazda, for me, the economy Mazda comes out on top. Of the three, it's the most luxurious, the most premium for the money in this more economy part of the class. So is Mazda a luxury car brand? Absolutely not. I would not say they're a luxury brand in the slightest. They are a premium brand that have an economy price tag attached to them. They're kind of letting their actions and their cars speak louder than their words at the moment. Would I buy one of these brand new? Absolutely not. Would I buy one second hand for £16,000? Again, absolutely not. But what's amazing is that in a few years' time, these will no doubt have depreciated to under £10,000 and sort of like, I'm imagining 6 to 8K kind of range. And if you're getting this much car for that much money, life's very good. So if you take anything away from this video, Mazda are not a luxury car brand. They are a premium, cheap car brand, which I know makes no sense, but that's the only way I can describe them. Obviously, I'm a Mazda owner. I have an MX-5. It's a very different type of car, so I don't really want to compare the two particularly, but it feels like Mazda are taking steps in the right direction towards building more premium cars. Massive thanks to Paige for their support, and to you guys as well for watching.